Hi and welcome to another of our After Hours conversations. My name's Kris Oldland, I'm the editor-in-chief here in Copperberg. We've just come out of a very, very busy day of conversation at eConnect, a Power of 50 event, where the focus is around conversation. As you may know, if you've seen any of our after-hour conversations, this is where I turn to some of the experts that have been hosting some of those conversations, and we try and draw some of that insight out. And so, Vincent, I'm going to ask you as a starting point to introduce yourself and talk to our audience, and then we'll just have a chat, because you're going to do a better job explaining who you are and what you do than I ever will. So let us know who you are and let's have some conversation around those insights.
Yeah, thank you. So my name is Vincent Van Hellemondt. I'm Growth Director at Valtech B2B, very much focused on industrial manufacturers and our growth, but above all an e-commerce enthusiast and in the past leading a big e-commerce team.
Perfect. Now, I've really been looking forward to this particular conversation because we've had some great partners on this event. We've had some great conversations with the delegates as well. We brought together a room, let's be frank, a room of 50 real industry leaders. But your presentation that you gave alongside Herbert earlier, it was really shining a spotlight on some of probably the most insightful trends that we've seen in the market. Obviously a project that we've partnered on, but as a starting point, do you want to just talk me through when you first saw the report and when you were first building that presentation, what were the numbers that stood out for you? What was the key insights that we should share with the audience today?
That's a great question, and obviously I would advise everybody to read it.
Yes,
because there's not much insights, but there are quite a few things that stand out. First of all, if we're talking about e-commerce in general and customer portals, two main digital domains, they become increasingly important. While simultaneously, people also indicate that it's still a channel that has much growth in it, much potential, meaning that the numbers are modest and everybody wants to invest in it. So also from an investment point of view, everybody says that is the major investment where investments go to. So customer portals and e-commerce. So things that are, from an investment point of view, important. But it's also a bit about the soft side, right? So we've presented around siloed organizations, what that does to your digital landscape. We talked about scattered IT landscape, and we talked about change management. All elements that today also during all sessions came out as very interesting points still to this Power 50 audience.
Yeah, it's interesting because the change management bit for me is the one that's ever present, and yet we still see, like if I look at the failures of digital transformation, you know, there's 67% roughly, depending on which data you look at, of digital transformation projects tend not to deliver the ROI that they're anticipated. And almost always it comes down to that piece around the change management, and I thought it was really interesting when you brought that piece out. Does that surprise you sometimes when you see that? Because we could be talking about the mobile revolution or cloud, and we've seen it with IoT, and we keep seeing the same thing. That change management is vital, isn't it?
It is, and no, it doesn't surprise me at all, to be honest. What does surprise me is that we haven't found a framework that at least accelerates how we incorporate change, let's say it in that way. And obviously change management is around the human side, and I always say you need to find your toolkit of change management that helps getting change across, and obviously you need to define your change agents. But at this moment nobody has found the holy grail, and that's why these conversations are so interesting, because everybody is providing their insights on how certain change management practices helped them in their digital transformation. Yeah,
it is, and there's two factors that I consistently see is the executive buy-in, which is what you guys touched on as well, and it was interesting to see how often we saw echoes of the same points made in different presentations, including your own. But it's that top level buy-in and that drive, but also then making sure that it's coming from the ground up as well. A slight change of tack. One of the things that I'm seeing now, specifically with the e-commerce, and when we start talking about the digital transformation that we're seeing, obviously in B2B we're behind where we would be in B2C. But it does feel like we're almost able to kind of make some quantum leaps because there are so many learnings from the B2C world. And I do feel that there's a lot of best practice that we can take, even if it's then adapting that to a slightly different environment.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that? Do you think that's a fair observation? Or?
Yeah, it's a really nice question, because one of the panelists also said, if we're talking about customer centricity, we're not there in B2B yet compared to B2C. But if you ask me, to be honest, Kris, it's also about, it's a whole different industry, right?
Yeah.
And you can't compare it. Where B2C is more about, I call it psychological warfare, right? Going from breadcrumb to really show experience. But in B2B, that's totally different. So if we talk about that experience domain, in my opinion, manufacturers are starting to succeed to personalize, rationalize everything around that customer. So yes, we still need to learn from B2C. There are many items where we can learn, talking about personalization, talking about the uses of data, etc. But on the other hand, we should not sail blindly towards what B2C are doing, because for me, you would definitely miss the point of what B2B organizations need.
Yes, and Lena on the panel actually referenced outside-in methodologies a lot. And I think that's something that we need to hold on to as we're going through these digital transformation processes, whether it be with e-commerce, whether it be on service, whichever aspect it is understanding, okay, what's the customer, what does the customer journey need to look like to make them delighted?
Yeah, correct.
And that is going to be very different to a consumer experience. There's a point that I've been kind of trying to dig out in a lot of these conversations around the maturity levels that we're seeing. And you kind of touched on this a little bit when we looked at the data. How do you see the maturity level of the world of e-commerce and B2B now? Are we just starting to get up the top of the curve? Have we scratched the surface yet? Are we building momentum?
Well, we are building momentum. So I think that there's still much potential out there. And at this moment, look at the numbers in the report, roughly 18% at this moment goes through digital channels. So in that sense, there's still much potential out there, especially because we heard it today as well. There are many organizations that are super mature and are doing a higher number than that 18% on average, right? So if you ask me, this is the tip of the iceberg. There's much potential to gain, especially from an e-commerce transactional domain. And I'm looking forward to next year and the audience, what they're going to share in terms of numbers.
One final question for you. We saw Danfoss, for example, at the beginning of the day today, posting some great numbers. I know somebody on the first iteration of your conversation had even better numbers. But then, like you said, they tend to be at the moment outliers. What are they doing right that the rest of the market isn't? Or perhaps phrase it the other way, what is the rest of the market doing wrong? And how does Valtech help those companies come forward as well? How would, if they were your clients, how do you bring them forward? How do you get them to the 88% or the 100%, etc.? Those great numbers that some of the organizations were posting.
Yeah, so in my opinion, I see two main themes. The first thing is relevancy. I think all the successful manufacturers are able to provide real relevancy towards their customers, being it personalization, being it insights into assets, but they provide relevancy through their platforms. I think that's a major important element. But second of all, and that's basically what we just touched upon, is how do you enable your own organization to onboard customers? And what is your strategy behind onboarding your internal organization? And with all the examples I hear from those successful companies, I hear they really think about their onboarding strategies and how to onboard and move clients towards their digital platforms.
And that brings it back to the change management. And one of those fundamental failings is when we think of change management, we only think of the internal. And in fact, actually probably the external. Change management with the client is probably even more important again, of bring them with us. It's been a great conversation, fantastic day, and we've really appreciated you sharing your insights. Vincent, real pleasure.
Thank you.
Speak to you soon.
Thanks for having us.